How do you discern, how do you determine whether or not you are on the path, or if your next step is on your path, or if it feels right, faith, trust, whatever? What's your process?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm still figuring that out, again, with that humility for why we're able to say anything. What a journey it is. And I feel like I'm in a very big growth area, transition area in my life where there's a lot of paths I could take. But it's definitely similar to what you said, tuning in, quieting down, having some kind of contemplative and like inward focused practice. For me, that's like meditation, yoga, nature, doing something that gets me out of that attention sphere that's always pulling and lets me have some time to reflect and offer space for my inner knowledge to come out, for my intuition to present itself. You know, when you're working on a problem, they say it's so important to have downtime, whether you're working on a creative problem or some other kind of, big project. You need downtime, and it's in the blank space that your creativity is actually able to flourish, and you get the eureka moment when you're taking the shower, or when you wake up from a sleep or something. People our grind culture tries to just keep grinding. We'll get there. But you can lay the groundwork, but then you have to rest normally for the fruit to actually come up.
Welcome to the Do You Feel Heard podcast, a production of Helping the Herd. Helping the Herd is committed to empowering individuals to liberate themselves from the patterns that keep them from creating their ideal life. If you like this podcast, visit helpingtheherd.com to find resources and personalized coaching to empower you to be your best self. Good morning, Derrick. Welcome, everyone, to the Do You Feel Heard podcast. Just the two of us today, a special episode, no guests, just the hosts, and we've got some pretty juicy topics today. But I'll first check in with you, Derrick. How are we this morning?
Just the two of us. I'm doing well. It was good to have a one-on-one with you, and I'm good. I'm in day 2 of a heat wave here in Pittsburgh. I was giving my weather updates on the podcast. Not always, but I remember complaining whenever we had 6 months of winter, and now, as will happen, balance. The yin and the yang. We are here, the third 100-degree day in a row. Everyone is just melting, and every AC is just screaming. No. So here we are. I had to move down from my normal studio to a cooler part of the house because the attic is only used for boiling lobsters and for the cats to take really warm naps in now. That's just what we've had to do with it. So other than that, it's not that bad. I like heat too. Just it's a little much. I'm quite good. I'm coming back from the Psychedelic Sciences Conference in Denver last week, so really riding high from a lot of wonderful presentations, meeting wonderful people, time with friends that I have out in Denver, and just a really wonderful week. I really hadn't been to a conference in too long, and it's just so inspiring, gets the juices flowing, so I'm feeling
awesome.
Quite good.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the pendulum has swung the other way, as it will.
As it will.
You were begging and manifesting that heat, and now it is here.
I get attachment. Attachment.
Attachment. We're already there. Attachment to a comfortable atmosphere. Since we're talking about weather, it's hot and sticky here, but not too bad. And it's thankfully we have invented the air conditioner many years ago. Not we as in you and I, but someone invented the air conditioner, and it is so nice, temperature-wise, in the house anyway. So, but yeah, most of my time here has not been spent at conferences. I've been mostly homesteading, so dealing with chickens and adding fish to the stock tank and just tinkering around.
Love it. I love that. That's what we need. You should set up one of those cameras. People like to watch homesteaders these days.
Do they?
You could have it's a whole thing, especially primitive living villages, or you can have a farm in Uzbekistan, and so they'll just have a camera going, and people watch it for hours. They'll have favorite characters.
Wow.
They're just people. People really are, some people are just really feeling called toward the simple life, and when they can't access it, they watch it on YouTube.
Mm.
What a world. What a
Interesting.
world.
Yeah, I wonder if what the crossover is from like being conditioned to create emotional attachments to characters through a screen
Mm.
from TV or movies or what have you, and then that translating into, oh, well, there's another character on the screen, but it's an actual real person living their real life, not an actor pretending to, portray a certain life. I wonder
Yeah.
how much like psychological like programming has led to that kind of a behavior of, oh, well, I'll just watch this character because they're living vicariously through these characters in ways that you can't live your life, or not can't, but are choosing not to pursue that for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. That's a pretty good segue into our kind of first topic we were thinking about.
Thank you.
How we, the natural over here. This isn't our first podcast. Living vicariously. It's a
This
really
is number
good way to
20,
put it.
bro. This is number 20 for the
The
record.
big 2-0.
That's right, man.
Not sure which way it's one of them. One of them will get it. One of them will be right. One of them will be right. Living vicariously. Yeah, I think that's a really. When I think of it in the darkest way, I think about our life being sucked out of us and put into these other things. When I think of it in a nicer, more optimistic way, I think of us breathing life into art and creations and making it more real and sharing it in the space between us. And there's a surplus of life. But when does it, when is it a gift of attention and when is it a sucking, dragging, stealing our attention, our life from us? That's kind of where I think about with attention. And like we were talking about before this, I've just been thinking a lot about what I've been calling the attention sphere. I'm just picturing this sphere of outlets and inputs for attention that's around us at all times, almost like a swarm around our aura, our consciousness, our body, and our attention, this most vital resource maybe, what we attend to, what we focus on, where we direct our energies. I doubt there's ever been a point in history where there was so much that it could latch onto, that we could attend to so easily. And I'm pretty positive there was never a point in history where there were so many things that were so catchy for our attention. They were so, whether being outright addictive to extremely appealing to neurologically designed to really catch us, whether you call that addiction or not, but something that's just, flashy in just the right way, or sounds just the right tone, or smells just the right way to make us attracted to it.
Yeah,
attracting our attention.
Another common thing in this period in time is outrage. The thing that will outrage us and get us to feel, and us, I just mean the collective, furious, or we've got to do something, this is wrong. But it's, very rarely, very rarely is the outrage not manufactured for some purpose, I've noticed. Very rarely is it like, we've got to stop poisoning all of our food and water supplies. It's like, oh, this thing happened to this one person, and the media is saying that we need to get out in the streets about this, but we'll just ignore all these other things that have been going on for decades. But this one thing, this is going to be the one, and it lasts for a week or two. And then that outrage is over, and now we're ready for the next outrage that we'll be upset about for a week or two, and then move on to the next one, which ultimately is creating very little change to our environment, and instead, really, like you're talking about earlier, sucking our energy from us, but really there being no result on the other end from all of that energy being exerted. There's nothing to show for it. Maybe not nothing, but very little to show for it. Certainly not lasting change that we need.
Yeah. It's an outrage as distraction instead of, an actual motivator being used towards something healthy, pro-social. We're seeing it, I think, a lot as distraction. We all know, that's no assumptions here. I know I've heard of many distinct examples where politicians have clearly used, let's say, something like a military strike or some outrage-inducing story leaked at the right time to cover up a scandal or something they don't want, or a bill being passed at this time. You know?
Right. Yeah. The timing always seems to be real convenient, real convenient. The same day that someone is killed by police is also the day that there's a massive vote on this budget thing that is it doesn't benefit the people, and they don't really want you paying attention to that. It's just, that's an interesting, I know that's not even on, I guess that is still focused on attention and where our attention is put. But yeah, it's always very interesting how like almost zoomed in we can get as a society of like, oh, this one thing is terrible. This one person was killed. And yes, I agree that one person was killed by the police, terrible thing. But then you look at the statistics and it's happening hundreds of times a day, weeks, whatever, over a certain amount of time, but it's happening often. But that one is pinpointed and pushed into the media recycling system where they'll talk about it, every hour on the hour for the next couple of days or weeks, and then shift the focus to something else. Because I think the thing I wanted to touch on that ultimately is that real change takes time and commitment and devotion to moving the needle. It doesn't come from being upset and being, protesting for a week and then going back to your job. Like that's not how that happens. A movement takes a while. And I think that's another negative impact, just removing any nefarious, string pullers that might be doing this on purpose, just on its face, to have so many different outrageous things happening all of the time. It's very difficult to stay focused on one long enough to move the needle for that one thing when there's 15 others that are going to be, bombarding you over the next month. It's like, how do you maintain that focus, that attention on that thing that really matters to you? Because they all matter, right? I mean, they're all, touch a different part of us that bring out empathy and, a desire for change. But when there's 15, you can't possibly be involved in 15 movements at a time.
That's right. No, absolutely. I think about timing is everything a lot. I was very lucky to have a college class with the president of the university at the time, University of Oklahoma, David Boren, who was a former U.S. senator. He was in the Senate, had a lot of, I forget which years exactly, but he had a lot of life experience, would just stroll in and, be talking about pulling Gorbachev into a closet at the Kremlin and having to talk about this because the spies were everywhere. And had all these crazy stories. He really lived it. He was really there for a long time and a good statesman as far as I could tell. I'm sure everyone has their flaws, but I think he was a well-meaning man. And he was a great president of the university. And it was just so wild to hear his different stories and experiences of politics. And the one thing I took away the most from that whole semester was when he said timing is everything. He was talking about politics. In politics, timing is everything. It's an art. And it's not about your bill. It's about when you put the bill on the floor. It's not about the thing you're trying to do. It's about the when you do it. Because very similar to what we're saying, in the halls of Congress, I guess, let's say, there's so much going on all the time. There's everyone, going for their agenda, trying to support their constituents or line their pockets or whatever they're trying to do at that time. There's so many motives. It's a mess, So it's really about the timing. And like you're saying, real change takes time. Another mentor said something that really stuck with me. The only way things change is through slow, steady pressure. He even said it all slow like that. It was so good. Slow, steady pressure.
Give you chills.
It gives me chills. For someone like me who I'm going to get this done today. This needs to happen today. I'm going to do the big push. And then, it's been a hard lesson for me to learn. Real change takes time, just like you're saying. Slow, steady pressure. And so, in this attention economy that we're in, it's very hard to know when something's like the spark. Let's say there's a outrageous incident. When is that the spark that is going to swell up and get everyone involved and motivated to take the real changes or do the actions needed for change? And when is it another flash in the pan that everyone's going to waste some energy on for a little bit? Whether that's just an outrage, Facebook post, a few protests, whatever it is. a donation here, and then it's a flash in the pan and it goes back down. I think that's the kind of one of the core problems of our time, and why I keep thinking about this attention sphere issue, because with so many things I've noticed I have a hard time knowing when I'm being manipulated by the news, the media sphere, wherever I'm plugging in to the different things, and when I'm actually following a passion of mine, when I'm following my like heart, my intuition that's telling me, no, this really is important. And it's like, how do you tune in and know what's real to you and what's the violins and the imagery pulling at your heartstrings?
Is that a rhetorical question, or you want to answer that?
Both, and it can be rhetorical, but I'm curious what you think. Your man, I think, was very intuitive, very good at tuning in with what you feel and think, and so yeah, I'm curious how you any whether that's heuristics for navigating that little dichotomy, or any practices you do that help you to know what's real.
Yeah, I think for me, my constant practice is I'm trying to just be in the seat of the observer as much as I can, zoom out as far as I can go. What's the biggest viewpoint that I can take of my experience? And from there, I typically find a lot of perspective and a lot of just clarity that isn't on the surface level when you're zoomed in. And so, for instance, for me and timing, I'm at this stage of my life, I'm very much in the feminine. I'm very much in the flow. I'm kind of allowing, accepting, I'm open for things to come in, and then I'll discern whether those are the right things for me, versus the first 30-ish years of my life. I mean, I probably wouldn't count childhood, but probably childhood too. You're probably trying to get in like immediate results. You cry because you're hungry. So I guess you can count those early years, but not consciously. Was I in the masculine of, I'm going to create my reality the way that I want it, and I'm going to go out and get it, and I'm going to, make it what I want. And what I found was there was a lot of difficulty, a lot of friction, a lot of suffering from not getting exactly what I want, how I wanted it, when I wanted it. I was very, attached to outcomes. Yeah. I want this, and I want it in this time frame. So what do I have to do? Who do I got to talk to? What steps do I have to take? And many times, regardless of the amount of effort and intention that I put into it, it didn't work out on the way in the timeline in the way that I wanted it. And that would lead to a lot of feelings and a lot of dissatisfaction with my experience, because it wasn't what I wanted. I was attached to it being a different way. So in this feminine state that I'm in, I'm okay with it not happening today or tomorrow. It feels almost like being in the woods and just kind of like really opening your ears to hear everything that's happening around you, subtle sounds that you wouldn't be hearing if you're tromping through the woods, walking a trail, you're stepping on branches, there's a lot of, there's a lot that you miss when you're moving versus when you're standing still. I think about, I went on this, I'm getting on a tangent here, but I went on this trip with some gentleman friends of mine. We all went on a guy's trip to Tennessee, to the Smoky Mountains. And it was incredible how much nature, like wildlife, was there, like legit wildlife that most people don't run into. Like you have mountain lions. We saw 12 bears in one day. 12 different bears in one day, and a lot of it wasn't even in the woods, just like around. Wow. They're just out there. And we heard some crazy noises in the woods while we were hiking. And it was alarming, the idea that these animals are not making a lot of noise. They're instead sitting, listening, observing, very much aware of what and who is in their environment, less worried about how they're moving through their environment, I guess. I mean, they're moving through it quietly, but they're more assessing what is in their environment. They knew exactly where we were, what we were doing, and we had no idea where they were because of their ability to simply take in what's happening around them. And that was really inspiring for me in my life, in my environment of, like, can I listen subtly to the currents, the flows of energy, what's pulling me in this direction, what's pushing me away from this thing, rather than being so caught up in what I want. Is it available? Is this path open to me, or is there resistance, and should I listen and be pushed into the natural flow of where I'm being directed? The opportunities, if you will. What opportunities are being brought to me versus what opportunities am I trying to create out of thin air for myself because I want this thing? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay,
does.
cool.
I really like I really like talking about the animals. I think it's easy to have the image and the sense of an animal to understand that way of being, because it's kind of, we've all seen that, whether it's on TV or in person. We've seen animals in their natural habitat, and you can think of the bear, and I really like that, tuned in, receptive, aware, kind of connected. And then the other thing we're talking about, if it is goal-oriented, let's say it catches a scent of prey and it's running through the brush trying to get the prey, that's whenever it would be more blinders on. It's not going to notice everything. It's crashing through the brush. Its eyes are on something. And that's what it feels like we are almost all the time. We always have the squirrel. I don't know what bears eat.
Not squirrels.
I don't think it's squirrels. Rabbits? I don't know. What does a bear hunt?
I think bears typically are foragers, and they're like opportunists. So if they can happen upon a delicious deer or something, I think they'd be all about it. But I think most of the time they're just looking for berries and, edible plants and things that are just kind of there, whatever's in their path. Yeah. I think maybe a mountain lion might be the better analogy there of like, they might, I wonder if they have a taste. Like, I wonder if they're like, you know what? I'm craving rabbit today. I'm going to go find me a rabbit, versus like they're just going to lay around on a rock and wait for something that's moving and be like, can I eat that? And then try to go eat that. You know what I mean? I wonder if they ever get like a hankering for a certain delicacy. I want some venison today. Like, I wonder if they have those kind of, desire-based like impulses like we do, where we're like, dang, I really want sushi today. I'm going to go find a sushi restaurant because I'm feeling sushi today. I wonder if they have that, or if it's always just opportunity.
That. Do mountain lions dream of delicious sheep?
Right.
It's going to be my thought experiment here. I really like that. We should find out. Where is the funding? Where is the funding? Guys, this is what I'm talking about. It's conspiracy. No, it's a good question. But let's say the mountain lion locked onto prey. Definitely not going to be as aware, as tuned into its environment, because just like you're saying, there's attachment, there's desire, there's blinders on almost, and it's a balance. It's not like one thing's wrong. Mountain lion got to eat, can't be, tuned into all the currents all the time. Sometimes that is the current, and that's kind of what we're talking about with the spark versus flash. I think whenever they're on there, they know that it's right to be ignoring the other things now. I'm hungry. I've been dreaming about rabbit for 3 days now. I got a craving. I'm pregnant. I want pickle juice and I want a rabbit. Whatever I need. The mountain lion. You go in for it. But in these days, it feels like there's just flashes everywhere. Flash. All right, go down the rabbit hole on your phone for 15 minutes, and then you don't have the rabbit in your belly afterwards. You don't have the thing that the satisfaction. But disperse.
The other half of that too is, which just coming back to the topic of like creating change, and it's a slow, steady pressure that you have to apply to get that change. Like, we live in a society where if you want something, you can get it almost immediately. Just about anything that you want, you get on that phone, that magic Google machine that you keep in your pocket that gives you access to all of the internet and everything that everybody is selling everywhere. Couple of button presses and it's on its way, and it'll be there shortly. Sometimes you press the buttons and you just go pick it up that same day, and less than an hour later you can go get exactly what you want. And so I think that we kind of get trapped sometimes in that mindset of, well, all I have to do is go on my phone and be outraged, and then I'm going to get what I want. But where's the slow, steady push, right? So discerning, when does it need to be slow and steady versus instant gratification. And I think that we're conditioned to instant gratification far more than the slow, steady push. Whereas that mountain lion understands that whatever prey it's going after, it would be instant gratification, but I don't think it's as attached to it. I think it understands, okay, there will be another opportunity, or, you know what I mean? I don't think but I mean, I don't know. We're personifying a mountain lion. I don't know what kind of feelings mountain lion would have.
I made it pregnant earlier. I made the mountain lion pregnant earlier. So
is that right? Is that your vision of it?
It's a morning sickness. It was having weird cravings, weird pregnancy cravings. So personify it all the way, but I'm following. And yeah, I love the term conditioning. We've been conditioned toward instant gratification from a lot of things. And I think about that all the time. And I think about how you do anything is how you do everything. I don't think that's completely true. And I've been having talks about that because I do feel like there's something about outlets. That's really my big juxtaposition for that one. Let's say, I like to practice martial arts and maybe get a lot of aggression out in things in an hour class. Go to my class, do that, go to the dojo, get it all out. I don't think I'm then angry for the other 23 hours. I think it actually goes the opposite way. I'm like less angry and I'm more controlled. But in general, I really like how we do anything is how we do everything. And I think here what we're talking about is how we've been conditioned toward this instant gratification. We've done it so much that it seems like that we should have it everywhere, and we might extrapolate that all over, and then we're losing lots of forms of natural, healthy, just more the word I'm looking for here is like in tune, connected to the rhythms of actual life. We're losing those patterns, those ways of being and doing things. I had a friend who hosted a dinner party last week while I was in Denver. It was really wonderful. And she talked about long dopamine. She was trying to get that long dopamine, cooking a stew that needed to cook all day and doing things that, built up over time. She was like having a long dopamine day instead of a short dopamine day. And I really liked that. We need more of that long dopamine. We need more of that often. And I'm not trying to speak for everyone, of course, trying to keep the whole collective in, but so many of us, I can only speak for myself entirely, but it seems like we're just caught in these short dopamine loops.
Yep.
That instant gratification, like you're saying. And I do want to just read through, because I sent you a bit of a list. I do think it's helpful, I think, to just see my overwhelm, at least when I really think about how many things I could attend to that have some value or that could be the right thing, or at least that are super catchy. I mean, just in one day, just texting you earlier, I came up with all these things to attend to. There's media, whether that's news, entertainment, TV, movies, music, some things like that I value so much. Others, they're just kind of entertainment. But somewhere I really think there's spirit and heart and attention and intention and messages. Great stuff. Video games. How many hundreds of hours of play do you get on one video game these days, if you have anything like that? Your health, the food that you eat, the health practices that you do for your body, for your mind, for your spirit, local politics, national politics, world politics, especially these days with the events as they are. When do I tune into the newest bombing or, development in a possible global war or changes in the prices of oil or other commodities? Depending on the life you live, there's all these things that could be relevant signals and could be straight up distraction and they are important to someone, but are they important to you? I don't know. I don't know what my life path is yet, so I don't know how to filter this never-ending stream. And then on top of that, you have your just immediate family, friends, your community, someone going through a hard time, someone going through a great time. You want to support and celebrate with them, or you want to support the person going through a hard time. You have all that family and friends and coworkers And then just on this little black box in front of us, you have TikTok and Instagram and Google, where you can answer any question, and Chat GPT, where you can ask AI any question and get this new powerful technologies take. They could change the course of your day or your week or your world. And there's influencers on all these platforms, or even in real life, trying to influence your behavior, trying to be a model. And then there's just a whole monster of advertising that goes through all of it, whether you're using it on the black box, you're walking down the street, and you have advertising, and people, again, intentionally trying to move your dial towards something. For better, for worse, for profit, or for social benefit, whatever reason, there's advertising everywhere. How on earth do we deal with such a fractured attentional system in this day and age?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I think that list could go on forever.
Really good.
I mean, you could get really deep into the micro and focus on one specific bug that is being, its population is dwindling, and what are the impacts of that one bug not having the population that it needs to serve its function, because we lose sight so easily of the fact that everything within nature has a function, has a purpose. It's here for a reason. Like, over however long, evolution of animal species has been happening, nature, I haven't witnessed a lot of waste within nature. There's not a lot of, we've got 15 different animals, they don't do shit, we just have them. They're not important to the ecosystem, they don't serve a function, they're just decorative. That's not really a common thing within nature. Everything has a role and a contributing force within the ecosystem. And so you could get on the micro and think about this one beetle, and for whatever reason, this pesticide that humans started using to, cut down on crop loss is negatively impacting this beetle, which is not doing this to the fauna, which is not doing this. And now we're having all these big, breakdowns. Like, you could put your focus and attention into that. And there's probably 100 different examples of that happening. And that's just bugs. That's not even talking about plant species or fungi or whatever. I think there's so many different paths that you can take as far as your attention goes. And you had asked earlier, how do you decide, how do you discern, which one you should focus on? And I think that comes down to discerning what your Dharma is. Mm-hmm. And that comes down to knowing yourself. Feeling within yourself in a way that is not superficial, not surface level, but really tuning into you, not your body, not your name, not your incarnation, but there's something deeper within all of us, I believe, and that is what you need to tap into in order to discern your Dharma. And so that's my personal practice. Is I kind of have all right, this is my Dharma, and this is this thing. Does it match? Does it align with my Dharma? For example, I feel very strongly in very deep caverns within my vessel that my Dharma is to help people, to serve, and specifically ending suffering. And my particular path to supporting people and ending their suffering at this stage of my journey is supporting people and understanding the suffering they create for themselves through their communication, through the way that they perceive their reality, through the way that they communicate with those around them. There's so much suffering that is self-inflicted because of the way that we communicate. And so for me, if it doesn't align with that Dharma, I'm going to be far less called to put energy into it. Yes, there are wars that are happening. Do I agree with them? Of course not. But is my going to a war protest going to contribute to my Dharma? Is it going to align with what I'm here to do? Probably not. I also don't I mean, getting into the Mother Teresa thing, I'm not going to go to a war protest, but I will go to a peace rally. I'm not going to put energy into war, but I will put energy into peace. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I think for me, my personal path and process and discernment is, how does it align with my Dharma? And if it doesn't, then I'm going to be less inclined to put significant energy into it.
Yeah. It's a good filter. It's a good filter to go through. And as you stated, knowing yourself, maybe the most important thing, and I think these days one of the hardest things, especially with everything that's going on here, with this attention sphere, with how murky the waters can get with so many different things. But I love that. And earlier you were talking about when we were talking about the nature and the bears and just all that, I was thinking about how Ram Dass will talk about having to live a relatively quiet, simple, integrated life so that he's not just creating more karma. And he noticed that how he lived was not separate from his spiritual practice, specifically meditation practice. You go to the cushion, and if you're not living in, let's call it integrated life, to simplify as best we can, if you're not living an integrated life, the first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe hour, maybe 2 hours of your meditation is just going to be sorting through all the karma that you had. Oh, there was that interaction, and I said that thing I didn't mean, and this happened, and I was really craving this, and I had that, and then it led to more craving, and so now I'm craving it now. And you'll just notice, if you slow down and you practice, you'll notice how so much of your meditation practice is just digesting the events of the day and the karma. So he realized for himself, Ram Dass was like, I had to start living in a way that produced less karma. I had to start living in harmony with myself and my environment. And then I was actually sitting and doing the work instead of just digesting the recent things. I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about here with the attention sphere, and just how I think so much of the time it's just distraction, things that we're digesting. And so even if we do make it to the mat and sit for 10, 20 minutes, I'm a huge proponent of meditation and teacher, and I still have a hard time extending past 20-minute sits in this busy, quote-unquote busy life that I lead. And yeah, it's not enough to really get through all that karma that's thrown around. So I love this idea of focusing on your Dharma to help you better, pick what karma you want to engage with and what things you want to interact with, so that you can make that slow, steady pressure toward your life story, your life's mission, whatever that might be. Really hard to tell.
Absolutely.
But it's worthy.
And since you're on the subject of Ram Dass, which he comes up a lot in this podcast, he's very much a guru of mine, and I know he's one of yours as well. But one of the things that stands out and helps me when I think about, there's so many places to put my focus, there's so many things I could be doing, but there was this, I don't know if it's a proverb. I feel like I call everything a proverb, but basically, you do nothing and yet nothing is undone. Like nothing is left undone, rather. Nothing is left undone, and yet you have done nothing. And so that idea is really, reassuring in that I don't have to do everything. It's not all on me to go down every single one of these paths of everything that I'm passionate about wanting to do or change or impact, and trusting that it will resolve. It will, whatever needs to happen will happen. And it's not my responsibility necessarily to be doing all the time. There's so much that I could do, but you don't have to. It will get done whether you do it or not. Just trust that, things are as they are supposed to be, and things will be as they are going to be, and focus on your Dharma. Just stay in your lane, if you will, if that's a more digestible, vernacular for you. Stay in your lane, focus on the things that are passionate and, impactful for you and the things that you feel called to do, and trust that there are others doing the things that they need to do so that all things will get done, but it's not on you to do all things.
That's so good. Well, to plug another
there we go.
Ram Dass
what a
follower,
one-upper. Go ahead.
To plug yet another Ram Dass follower and Seed for the Future, on the podcast you and I will be appearing on later today, Becoming Nobody, which very much already speaks to what you're saying, this, doing nothing, becoming nobody with Alex. I want to talk about devotion with him, and I want to talk about why we do certain things, and this concept of doing something for someone else or for something else instead of for yourself, I think is so clarifying. And I just want to sprinkle that in here. We'll dive into it more this afternoon, but when you talk about clarifying your purpose, your intention, why you're doing the things, I actually do think that can be really clarifying. It's really hard to know myself, but when I'm doing something for someone else, whether you're doing it for your partner, for your friend, for your family, doing it for God, doing it for nation, doing it for community, doing something for someone else, I find can actually be inherently clarifying, can be incisive in getting down to my real motivation and what I should do in that situation. As opposed to when I'm doing it for myself, I can get kind of lost in this attention sphere and all these competing wants and desires and shoulds. So, yeah, I'm going to plant that seed now and give that shout out to Alex. Becoming nobody, doing nothing, and nothing's left undone.
Yeah, I'm trying to find real quick the actual... I don't want to misquote it, but I remember... Proverb. Yeah, I think it's another proverb. Truly, though, it might be another proverb. But I feel like it was a depiction of, like, the Final Supper, or Last Supper or whatever. But, like, the original...
Ultimate Supper.
Yeah. The depiction, though, the visual depiction was... And it may not be the Final Supper, right? It may be a whole different thing, but there was this depiction of everyone at a dinner table. So imagine like a long rectangular, very long table that everybody's sitting down to eat at. And maybe it's a difference of like heaven and hell. But anyway, hell is I'm not gonna be able to get it right. No. But essentially like only being able to like eat with your right hand, but your right hand is feeding the person next to you and instead of feeding yourself. And so like the idea being that like everyone gets fed when we feed everyone else. When you serve the person next to you, the person next to you serves you, versus everyone trying to feed themselves, but they can't for some... I'm missing the full context, but there's... Gotcha. In the context, like if you try to feed yourself, you can't. But if you feed the person next to you, then it's possible. It's something along those lines. I'll have to find the actual thing that I'm looking for here. But the idea being, if I serve you, someone else will serve me, and if we just serve each other, everyone is fed. But if everybody is focusing on feeding themselves and not feeding the other person, then nobody gets fed. I cannot think of what the actual thing was, but that's kind of similar to what you're talking about, where being in service to others is fulfilling in so many ways. And I think when we talk about karma and laws of reciprocity and every action has an equal and opposite reaction, like however you want to phrase it, if you do good, good is done to you. If you serve others, others will serve you. Like if you take that path, I find there's very little that I need. There's very little that I'm missing when I'm in in the quadrant, if you will, the wheel of consent quadrant of serving, doing for others, doing for the benefit of others. I find that is reciprocated, at least, fully, if not more than what I've given do I receive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up the wheel, because you're really good at explaining, when we're in the different quadrants of the wheel of consent, what something is and what something isn't, the shadow side and the bright side. And a lot of people, I think, when you first look at something like this, or the concept of serving, they can talk themselves out of it by thinking they understand it, but really talking about the shadow, talking about when it's not integrated. So serving others, yeah, I'm feeding others, I'm going to go hungry. Well, that's one way to look at it, but I think the way you're talking about it, I think if we really look into it, feeding others kind of involves a bunch of subsets. If we really do want to serve, let's get out of there now, just saying serving others. If we want to serve others, we do serve ourselves. That's one of the, what do they call it? It's like an operative goal, or one of the, like a subsidiary goal. I forget the word, but you have one goal, but then you have the goals, do you know what I'm talking about? Incremental goals, something like that. Using a lot of close words, but not the word I'm looking for. But you have a lot of like smaller goals that will get you to your larger goal. So if your goal is to serve others, one of your incremental goals will say, will have to also be serving yourself, so you continue to have the ability to serve others. If you're feeding others, you might also take a break and feed yourself, because it's your job to keep feeding others. It's your desire, it's your role right there to serve others. So maybe you take a break, maybe you stretch because you can't serve others. If you don't stretch, maybe you start taking care of yourself because you're motivated to serve others. And I really find it clarifying, compared to, unfortunately, still working through why this is. If I'm just trying to serve myself, I don't have that same strong desire to take care of myself in a way that allows me to keep serving. It doesn't feel as right for some reason. I think that's what we're talking about here, this way in which everything's connected, and where it does seem to be truth. It's not just a proverb or a parable or a nice saying, but when I serve others, and when I tune in and find my role in the ecosystem and start going outward instead of inward, things start to clarify, things start to flow, and I do find it does come back around. Yeah, it sounds a little wishy-washy, hippy-dippy, but I also think it's really the way things work in a lot of ways. And back to the attention sphere, that seems to be one of the big issues, is what I'm seeing with this fractured attention, is that attention can be dispersed in ways that leads to it not actually coming back. Attention and energy dispersed in ways where it's not actually coming back to you.
Right.
If you're spending all your time thinking about Israel and Iran right now, and you're not in the Department of Defense or a nonprofit working over there, or you're not doing anything about it, then that attention's going there, but it's probably not actually doing too much. And so nothing is coming back to you. Yeah. Or if it's inside the recess of your own mind, you're just scrolling on TikToks and you have them buzzing around your head, and it's just kind of circling in your own mind instead of going out anywhere. It's just kind of buzzing around your own body. It's not the same as feeding the person next to you. Sure. And opening yourself up to being fed by the person on your other side.
Yeah, I think that connects to focus on what you can control, focus on what you can touch, what you can impact. Don't get spun out on things that you have no chance of impacting or changing. That resonated for me as you were speaking of what can I impact, and I'm going to focus on that. I personally don't spend a lot of time watching the news or consuming media of that type. I focus on who can I touch, who can I impact, who can I serve, and that's where I put all of my attention and my focus as much as I possibly can. Not all of it. That would be, not impeccable speech to say all of it. But as much as I can, I'm very intentional about where do I put my focus and my energy, because I have been on the other side of it, and truly, it was damaging. I created a lot of damage to relationships around me when I was trying to, impact things that I couldn't impact. I was going about it the wrong way, very resentful. I was very holier than thou, very righteous, in the way that I thought that things should go. And when others didn't view it that way, I was very, just rude, condescending at times, because people didn't see it that way, and created a lot of, again, damage to friendships and relationships in general. Whereas now I don't negatively impact relationships, hopefully at all. My aim is to, uplift and support and care for everyone that is in my sphere, everyone that's in my network, or even like, secondary to my network. If I can support someone that I know, I do, if it's within my, capacity. Whereas before I had a lot of feelings about all of the things that were happening in the world, and was not processing them in the healthiest way. I think we should do a podcast about that one day. Let's do a full episode about like kind of where we were versus where we are.
I like that.
Because I think there's a lot of wisdom I sure hope there's a lot of wisdom to be found in all of the missteps and all of the ways that I used to move through the world compared to the way that I move through the world now. And I hope that a lot of it can be inspiring for those that are feeling a lot of the same frustrations and dissatisfactions with like running into walls and like thinking that they're doing the right thing, and then like everything that they had been building since it was built essentially on sand ends up crumbling because it's not how they need to be putting their time or their attention, and fruitless ultimately. Very, very fruitless pursuits so many times over my life, because I didn't have the perspectives, the Dharma to compare my path to, the direction that I want to go. Is it my path, or is it just, another fruitless path that I'm going to months later look at it and be like, man, I can't believe I, thought that this is what I needed to be doing, or how I needed to be spending my time. Kind of just focusing on our growth.
Oh, I love that. I think that's really the only reason why I feel comfortable with us, recording and sharing and having that chutzpah to think that what we share is valuable. That listeners, there's something here that we hope might, benefit your life or the lives of someone that you know. The only way I can do that is with the great humility of knowing who I have been, who I still am, and how far I still have left to go, and just looking at that whole process, ideally without too much judgment and with some acceptance, and just trying to learn lessons day after day. And love your simplifying way of looking at that. What bore fruit? What was fruitful? What wasn't? In the type of Buddhism that I studied a lot for the mindfulness meditation course. A really, really simple framework they liked for you could apply to any situation. Ground, path, fruition. What's the ground? Where are we? What's our situation? Like the bear in the woods. What's the path? What path are we looking at? What path should we look at to get somewhere? Fruition. Where do we want to get? What's the fruit of our efforts in this? Whether it's in this meditation or in this career move or in this plan for the day. What's the fruit that it'll bear? Really, really simplifying. Love that.
Yeah, and sometimes you won't be able to see the fruit. I've personally, there's been plenty of steps forward that I have taken not knowing what the fruit was going to be, but just feeling like I'm on the path. There was another, here we go, Proverbs. Once you once you know your path, all you have to do is take a step forward. Something along those lines. Like once you're on the path, there's nothing left to do except walk. Just walk it. So just continue taking the steps on the path, not knowing where the path is going to go or what is going to be on the path, what you're going to encounter on your path, but just stay on your path. I don't know if that resonates for you, like a feeling like you're on the path or on your right path. But I certainly remember feeling like I'm not on the right path. you know?
Yeah.
And so there's a difference between it feeling aligned and it feeling really difficult and like lots of friction, lots of running into barriers and speed bumps and detours. And like, that's not, the path doesn't feel like that, right? The path, your path doesn't feel like that. Your path feels like, oh yeah, great, great. The universe is providing everything that I need for me to take this next step. That's when you're on the path. For me, that's my experience of if I'm walking my path as I'm supposed to, or as I'm, not designed to, but that's the word that's coming to me.
Yeah.
Then everything will be provided.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I really go back and forth on this one often.
Okay, great. Let's debate it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, and this is perfect. There's a story I wanted to tell you from the conference that related to this perfectly. But yeah, no, I really hold both. I'm hearing what you're saying. I hold this intuition that there is a flow, that when I'm on the path, there is a flow, and often the resistances are because I'm not paying attention enough, because I'm not actually, that I'm grinding my gears and not in a positive direction, and it might not bear fruit. But I also have room for this concept of faith and challenge and perseverance. And there's we'll call it a parable or a proverb. We'll call it a proverb from the Bible about going through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. What gives you the faith to go through a desert, a dearth? You're not getting fruit for your efforts. You're walking day after day, and it's hotter and drier, hotter and drier. How do you know when there's something on the other side of that and when there's not? You don't, and that's where this big, beautiful, expansive faith comes in. And maybe we'll get into this more when we talk about devotion with Alex later. But faith is a really interesting concept for me, and I go back and forth on it. But when we talk about, walking your path, there's a great story here in one of my favorite talks at the conference was about creativity, music, psychedelics, and the juxtaposition of these. And they had a scientist, a NASA scientist, and then two music performers, producers that were really wonderful. And in that they told about the author of The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho. You know The Alchemist, Dan? Yeah, I figured you would. I really like that book. I really liked it. And something I never heard, one of the presenters said that when Paulo first submitted this novel, that eventually becomes one of the most famous novels. I read it in high school. We all had to read it and write essays on it. And, a very well-revered novel. Complete flop. I think he was living in Spain at the time. He was like destitute and submitted it. Sold like 6 copies. They gave it back to him. They were like, take your trash. Like, this is trash. Mm-hmm. Here you go. We're not doing this. And he didn't give up on it. He, destitute, some people might have wrote another book, done that. He didn't change a single word of it. He kept putting out because he believed in it. He had faith. Let's say he knew that it was the thing. Didn't change a single word. Kept submitting out. Absolute, international bestseller. Very famous. If he would have listened to that first resistance, if he would have listened to that first no and believed it and said, well, the universe is giving me resistance, I better change my course, would have never went out there. So that's what I offer to juxtapose. I think both have truth in them. But sometimes the time off the path is still part of the path. Our challenge is the desert is still part of the path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would then the question would be: is one door not being opened on the path mean that you're not on the right path, or are there many doors that can open and being open to there being more doors than that first one that you've tried to go through, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm trying to think of it. So one thing that we're developing right now that is being developed with Helping the Herd is we've condensed our program that we've run couples and co-parents and individuals through. We've condensed it into a 13-week program where in 3 months you go from start to finish and you will have understood and like not consumed, but you have digested, if you will, the same amount of information and concepts and tools as our previous clients have done in 9 months. So we've condensed it into 13 weeks, and we have proposed it to drug courts. So there are pretty much every county, as far as I know, every county court has a drug court program, which is where if somebody has a drug offense, they have the option. Obviously, the judge has to decide whether or not to provide this option. But there's this option to go through a drug court program where you go through rehab of some sort of inpatient or outpatient service. And then you go through like 4 stages or phases of like recuperation or rehabilitation. And then at the end of it, if you've accomplished all the things, the judge commutes any sentencing that they would have given you, and you avoid going to jail, you avoid things on your record, you avoid fines and all those things. All you have to do is go through this program and come out on the other side of it, and which ultimately, ideally, will cut down on recidivism. We don't, the idea is we don't want people who make a mistake doing drug things to be put in the system. And we know statistically that once you're in the system, you're far more likely to maintain and be in the system for the rest of your life. And so they have these drug court programs. And so we have pitched this program to 2 counties, I haven't fully pitched it to the second county yet, but we pitched it to 1, and it was received very positively, but the door hasn't opened yet. Well received, door isn't opened. Does that mean that, this isn't meant to be? Or do you keep pitching it to different doors because it feels like this is what needs to happen, what would be beneficial, what would serve people, what would align with my Dharma and the path that I feel like I am on? This aligns with that. So do I keep pushing it until a door opens? Because there are so many doors, right? It feels very similar to that. And at this stage, one door is still, it feels like it's cracked. It's not open, but it's also not closed. And so you just keep going. Very similar to the author of The Alchemist. Like, okay, I've wrote it. The first person didn't love it. That's okay. Let's keep going. Let's see if there are other doors available. And so, again, discernment, right? Faith. I think they're hand in hand. I have faith that this program will help people. And so I'm going to keep pushing it and modifying it and, trying to position it in a way that it does align with what someone else wants for their drug court program. And we get it in there, and we're able to really find out how effective this 13-week program is, and just keep building on it.
Yeah. And it seems like it goes back again to what you were saying. Know yourself. Know thyself. It ends up being, cliches are cliches for a reason, right? That's something that my friend Jordan and I like to banter back and forth about often, because you hear cliche and you want to just be like, all right, get your Hallmark card out of here.
Yeah, your bumper sticker.
Yeah, but cliches are cliches for a reason, and they normally don't become cliches unless they have some deep truth in them.
Right.
And maybe they're overused or too widely applied, but in general, they're for a reason. So that know thyself, there's a reason we've heard that for so long. And that's how I think it's one of the only tuning measures you have for your own fire, your inspiration, and then community is where you come in. I think then you run that by others. You pitch it and you see if there's interest, and you talk to your friends and say, hey, is this a valuable offering? And can you think, am I missing something? What do you have from your lens? And you look at it from all these different angles, and I think you can get more of a sense. But at the end of the day, I do think it comes back to that heart, just like Paulo Coelho, just because one editor, one team of editors, one publisher said no, that you could say, well, that was my perspective. Other people don't. But he did it to enough. He got enough people involved that there was something there. There was a spark, and he found the fans, and then the flames came up. And I think it's the same thing we have to do with our own sparks, and watch out for flashes. Watch out for those.
Did you have any thoughts to add to your process of discernment? How do you discern? How do you determine whether or not you are on the path, or if your next step is on your path, or if it feels right, faith, trust, whatever? What's your process?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm still figuring that out, again, with that humility for why we're able to say anything. What a journey it is. And I feel like I'm in a very big growth area, transition area in my life where there's a lot of paths I could take. And so I'm really coming in with a lot of humility to that question as I try to figure out of all the different pools. But it's definitely similar to what you said, tuning in, quieting down, having some kind of contemplative and like inward focus practice. For me, that's like meditation, yoga, nature, doing something that gets me out of that attention sphere that's always pulling, and lets me have some time to reflect and offer space for my inner knowledge to come out, for my intuition to present itself. When you're working on a problem, they say it's so important to have downtime, whether you're working on a creative problem or some other kind of, big project. You need downtime, and it's in the blank space that your creativity is actually able to flourish, and you get the eureka moment when you're taking the shower, or, when you wake up from a sleep or something. People our grind culture tries to just keep grinding. We'll get there. But you can lay the groundwork, but then you have to rest normally for the fruit to actually come up. So trying to follow that advice myself, take it slow, leave times for integration, for spontaneous arrival, and then asking friends, getting other perspectives, running it by others. And that's something I'm trying to get more intentional with and better at utilizing, connecting with my community. Mm-hmm. I think things can seem personal and private, and you don't want to bother someone, and you're afraid of what you might hear, and you're worried about hearing it's a bad thing. You're worried about hearing it's a good thing. You're afraid of failure, or you're afraid of your own greatness. And whatever reason, I notice that I don't do that final step as much as I would like to right now of, using my friends, my family, the community around me that I trust to, talk with. And so that's something I'm trying to ramp up a little bit now. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways, back to Ram Dass, all rivers lead to the ocean, right? Like it all, there's so many different ways, so many different paths to the same place. I'm always curious how other people are, navigating their way to the ocean. I know my river meanders pretty wildly sometimes, but ultimately it's still going to get to the ocean. And again, that goes back to that trust and that faith of, I'll get there. It may not be a straight shot. In fact, I know it won't be a straight shot. But there's so much beauty in the meander, right? Like being like water is another mantra that I tell myself as often as I can be mindful enough to remember to tell myself is, the water doesn't have an opinion about the downed tree that's in the middle of the river, or some large boulder that's in the path. It just goes around it, or over it, or under it, or it doesn't have feelings. It's not attached to how it's going to get to the ocean. It's just on its way. It's just making its way to the ocean, and when it gets there, all things that it will have had to have traversed to have gotten there will have just been a part of the journey. And accepting those downed logs, those boulders, those sharp left turns that you weren't expecting, take it and just continue moving with grace and non-attachment to the exact path that you're going to take to the ocean. Allow the turns and the twists, and that's when you have that perspective, when you have that zoom out, everything's okay, I'll get there when I get there. There's a lot more beauty that can be seen in those twists and turns versus that mindset of, well, I didn't want this turn. I wanted my path to stay on this straight path where I'm still doing the same job, in the same position, or with the same partner, on this same whatever. But how freaking boring would it be if you were a river and it was just a straight shot? Everything was laid out for you. There was no challenge. There was nothing to overcome, no obstacles. It would be dreadfully boring to experience a life like that. I think it would get old pretty quickly. And that's an Alan Watts thing, too, that he talks about it, the idea that if this was, a dream, if we were able to dream a life, like at first you would have the most fantastical, just like, unreal experience. And then eventually you would give yourself more and more obstacles, more and more,
surprise.
Exactly. Surprise and gambles and all these different things. And it would all be beautiful if you had that perspective. If you knew that that's what this was, you'd be able to have far more grace and acceptance for the twists and turns versus, well, all my eggs are in this basket. This is the one life I've got, and it needs to be everything that I want it to be. Otherwise, I'm not going to be satisfied with it. And if that's your approach, you're going to have a lot of suffering. You're going to suffer a lot in this experience if you're not open to things twisting and changing and turning and not being how you thought they were going to be.
That's right. Yet another good segue, I think, for that other topic we talked about a little bit, acceptance versus avoidance. I think we've been meandering around it this whole time. But yeah, I really like this. It's always a great reminder that I think of it this way: nature works in spirals and humans work in straight lines. I think about that a lot. You look at nature and there's spirals and curves, and you look at humans and we have four walls and we have frames and boxes on everything. It's so daunting how hard it can be to kind of mix those two and to take that human-centered structure and order and look at the chaos and beauty of nature. Looking out of my garden right now and just find a way to merge with those, because neither one's wrong. But I really resonate with everything about the river there, and like you're saying, the water doesn't. Well, there's a dam, hard right. We're gonna just go straight off and we'll jump in the bank, and then we'll find another place where there's no obstructions. It's not how it flows around and moves through it and curves and swirls around it. So that's really what made me think I thought it was perfect, this acceptance versus avoidance, if you'd still like to explore that.
Yeah, definitely. We were, my partner and I were talking briefly the other night about this topic of, inability is not the right word, because I think that people are able, but maybe the choice to not accept what is and the consequences that come from that. And just the idea of how often and how many different examples there are of instances where humans will be dissatisfied with I only reserve these. Apparently my work focus mode is only for an hour when I do podcasts. It's used to our 1 hour thing. It's that like adaptive thing where Apple's like, oh, we'll put your do not disturb on for you based on your patterns, and it's used to us doing only 1 hour long podcasts, clearly, because it's letting calls in now. But anyway, so many examples of humans trying to dominate or conquer nature or the forces of this world that we live in, or even going as straight into the vanity pathway, which is what we were talking about last night. Of, well, I don't think that I look good as a brown-haired person, so I'm going to dye my hair blonde, and I'm going to spend once a week or once every 2 weeks I'm going to go to a hair salon and put all these chemicals into my hair, which are going onto my scalp, which is being absorbed into my body. And how many examples are there of different brands of things being recalled because of cancer causing agents? And like, if we had accepted that our hair was brown instead of being so attached to it being something else, maybe we would have avoided those consequences. of, for instance, cancer. Not saying if you change your hair color, you're going to get cancer. Not saying that, but just one example. I mean, think about maybe a more tangible example would be, mass producing vegetables and being afraid of or not accepting crop loss. And so we spray all of those vegetables with all of these chemicals that will kill bugs so we don't lose the crops. But then what about all the consequences of all the poison in the soil, in the food, the loss of the bugs? There's so many things, so many negative consequences that happen. And there's hundreds of examples of humans not accepting things as they are and going through great lengths to make them appear to be something else. But then there's so many consequences that come on the other side. Had we only accepted what was, we wouldn't have had those consequences. We don't like that our eggs stick to our frying pan, so we put Teflon on our pans, and then we find out, oh my God, the consequences of Teflon and the harmful effects. If we had only accepted and just kept making cast iron, you know what I mean? And you wouldn't have those negative unintended consequences from our inability, or again, it's not an inability. I think we are able, but our decision to not accept what is.
I love you. Keep catching yourself trying to be impeccable with your speech. Someone practices what they preach, obviously.
The constant practice.
Practice what you preach. Be impeccable with your speech. I actually made
Very
a freestyle that started with that one today. It was a good one. It was a good rhyme. All right. I need to send that to you. I love that. That was a fun one. All right. So this is really great because it challenges me. I relate to what you said earlier about the masculine portion of your life. I have almost always been let's go out and change things and make them better and make them the way that I want them to be. And all right, there's a barrier, I'll find my way around it. And there's a roadblock, I'll find my way around it. And can't afford to go to college, I'm going to get every scholarship known to man, and I'm going to do that. And I'll work 3 jobs and I'll make it happen. I won't let something get in my way. Someone says no, I'm going to find another way to ask. I'm going to find a way around it. And I think there's a lot of beautification in that. And if something's unjust, I'm going to find a way to make it just. And there's a lot of positive, there's a lot of human spirit there, and there's a lot of ways of making the world better. If you see injustice in the world, I think it is kind of important to change it. And I'd be like, well, let's accept that. Well, slavery is a thing. I guess we should all just accept that. No, you have a freaking war to end that if that's what you have to do. So, I really am of 2 to 1,000 minds about this thing. And some of the stuff I heard from your great examples, like the Teflon, the chemicals, the opening yourself up to risk. Maybe not certain risk, but more risk, unknown risk. When we change things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Again, there's a wisdom in the cliche. Maybe we shouldn't try spraying Teflon until we know for certain that it's healthy. And can we ever know for certain that it won't have an issue? Probably not. So that's why I think so many people do lean toward conservatism in the largest sense, not saying Republican, Democrat, but like conservatism, conserving things the way they are. I think over time, this has been my progression, coming from super, super progressive to slowly inching toward conservative, because you either have enough real life experiences of when, you changed something and you found out there was a reason it was the way it was.
Right.
So nature doesn't do too many things, willy-nilly. There's not a lot of extraneous species around.
Or mistakes. Nature doesn't seem to make a lot of mistakes.
It makes happy accidents.
Yeah, Bob
Ross taught me that. My favorite biologist. My bobologist.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I really hear this around this, if not an inability, this difficulty that we can have with accepting things as we are, in the way to which we're almost sometimes pathologically willing to open ourselves up toward risk and toward negative externalities to change things. And that's the other thing I wanted to bring in Alan Watts again. He talks about the fullness of the view. The fullness of the view. I really like that expression. That's what he advocates for. And what he might say that psychedelics can help with, what meditation experiences can help with, what wildlife experiences, like going up to space and seeing the whole earth as a ball in your eye instead of just, conceptually. He'll talk about the fullness of the view and how clarifying that can be. And what I'm hearing here is a lot of shorter views. I don't want my eggs to stick. I put the Teflon on the pan. I don't consider any of the possible externalities from that, because I'm working with a narrow view, and that makes me a little distorted.
Yeah, I think that what you were sharing brought up for me, again, back to Ram Dass. It seems like it's just a never-ending like callback, a constant callback to Ram Dass. But he has these little short, like, lecture clips on Audible. It's a Here and Now podcast, where there's like anywhere between 10 to 40 minute long audio recordings of Ram Dass talking, doing lectures, Q&As, just speaking. There's actually a couple where he's reading from the Ramayana, and I'm just like, how incredible would that have been to like have Ram Dass read you the Mahayana? Like, I can't imagine like that kind of an experience. But one of the things that he mentions often is his experience with Maharaji, where he's, feeling big feelings about the war and death and people starving, and Maharaji telling Ram Dass, isn't everything perfect? Can't you see that everything is perfect? Everything is exactly how it's supposed to be. And Ram Dass is like, but there's so many things. There's so many like things that I want to impact. There's so many things that I wish weren't, not wish, but like there's things that could be different. And, ultimately what he decided, or what he learned or discerned, is that for him, it was within his Dharma to try to change certain aspects of the reality that he was living in, specifically when it came to war and nuclear war. He felt it was very, it was critical. It was a crucial part of his Dharma to try to impact that. And so coming back to discernment, recognizing that everything is perfect, everything is as it is supposed to be, and also you have your own individual Dharma, which may impact these things in certain ways. And so going back into yourself, knowing yourself, and knowing your Dharma based on how does it feel inside of you to be on this path, or to put efforts into this certain area. Like if it's in your Dharma to impact homelessness and people starving in your own community, go work at a food kitchen, go work at a homeless shelter, go volunteer your time, because that's part of your Dharma. Go do those things, but make sure that it is, fulfilling something within you. It is touching a part of your soul, to be in that space, versus what I see a lot of is just people being dissatisfied with the way that things are, and they're upset and they're angry and they're projecting, and they're, that's bringing in a lot of negative energy, a lot of, ultimately bad karma, because you're not accepting what is. You can accept what is and still try to change it, try to positively impact it, versus, screaming at the top of your lungs how wrong it is that these things are happening, but you're not actually positively impacting anything by doing that.
Yeah, man. I like that comparison you gave earlier to the war. I won't protest war, but I'll support peace. And Ram Dass talks about that beautifully, about creating of opposites, and how one thing often has an equal and opposite reaction. And, did we create the drug backlash and the war on drugs by, the acceptance and the widespread, embrace of it in the 60s, and what happened there? And is every protest actually leading to more, people being hurt at protests and all these things? It's an interesting balance. And he's so well talks about what you're circling around here, this acceptance. And brought to mind a few things. one wonderful panel of relationship therapists, especially psychedelic relationship therapists, talked about one of the most important concepts they thought for couples, and one of the most beautiful green flags in a relationship was approach versus avoidance. So whenever there's something difficult, a little different than acceptance, this was approach, actually even going toward the uncomfortable thing, the discomfort, and bringing your awareness to it, bringing your love to it, as opposed to what can often happen, especially in a relationship: avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. Approach over avoidance, very similar to acceptance, but with that little extra, I'm going to move toward it with my light, with my awareness, and see what can be done there, and see where the fruit is. Maybe there's that. And
let's stay there for just a second. Because this aligns with our coaching philosophy when it comes to communication as well, which is don't avoid the thing by avoiding it. Avoiding conflict creates more conflict. So if there is a conflict, approach it, talk about it, do so in a healthy way, in a loving, respectful, mindful, healthy, communicative way. Don't avoid it or pretend like it's not there or bury it or whatever, because it's fruitless. It's not, you can't truly avoid it. It will surface. If you bury something down, it's a matter of time before it resurfaces. It's a fallacy to think that you can, these feelings are coming up, or I'm not happy with this, I'm just going to ignore that. It's not possible. You will not ignore it. You might be very good at, disassociating with it and just not acknowledging it, but it will impact and it will eat away and fester in different ways. It's still going to come out. It just may not come out clearly as that thing. It may eat away at other things, your patience, your tact with other people, and you may not even connect that that's where that's coming from, because you've disassociated and pushed it so far down that you're not even connecting that that's what's surfacing. And so avoiding is in my opinion, very rarely, I won't say never, very rarely is avoidance the answer or the right path. But of all the things I've learned, I think that's paramount. Avoiding is the wrong path. Don't avoid it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Don't avoid. The void is void if you don't avoid it. The void is void if you don't avoid it. Yeah. And another thing from that same panel was great. Conflict is an attempt at collaboration. We often say conflict is a good thing. I really like this. Conflict is what a way to frame it. Conflict is an attempt at collaboration. If we take on that just mental exercise of viewing when, let's say, our partner is being conflicting, there's conflict. If we were to say, what if they were really just trying to collaborate and they just don't know how? They're just trying to play. And instead of it becoming this thing where we grind to a halt and avoid, whereas maybe like improv, yes and. When you were describing the river going down to the ocean, I just thought of yes and. I thought of, Amy Poehler or Tina Fey doing improv in Chicago. And that prime principle. You suggest something yes and you add to it. And more, that's what I want in my relationships. I want someone who's yes and, who is playing with me, who's collaborating. And we build something together. And we build momentum. In the same way that water can make it through any obstacle, really, because it's building momentum as it travels downstream. It's yes and, it's going up and over and going around. If at any point it reached the log in the stream, it was like, nope, it made that hard right, as if it could.
Right.
Then, when it finally did restart, it would have only a little trickle and it would get stuck at the next dam, and it would get stuck at the next dam. That's what's happening so often when we avoid, when we say no but instead of yes and we lose all that momentum and energy and love that can propel us forward into the fruit, into where we're trying to go. So much of the time. And that's exactly what you're pointing out here, this acceptance and approach versus the bye of avoidance.
Right. Yeah, and another thing that I'd written down that I didn't speak was the idea, just rewinding briefly, of not going to a war protest, instead going to a peace rally. Don't fight the darkness. Instead, spread light, spread love. Like, the darkness is necessary. The darkness is exactly how it is supposed to be. Don't fight what is. But if you put your focus and energy into the thing that feels right for you, that will do the thing that you're wanting. That will bring about the outcome that you're seeking versus trying to fight what is happening. And then the conflict. Similarly, like what one of the phrases that's often used with helping the herd is conflict is an opportunity for intimacy. Conflict is a good thing because it opens the door for you to more deeply understand the other person. And so conflict is simply opposing views. You don't agree on something or you had different experiences, but a lack of, like, maybe congruency. Like, you're not necessarily seeing things exactly the same way. And so instead of fighting that, instead of being like, no, my way is right, your way is wrong, being more open to understanding the other person to the point where you can understand their perspective separate from your perspective. Don't compare it to yours. Deeply understand them, and they'll deeply understand you, and you can move forward together when you deeply understand each other. But if you're closed to seeing something in any way other than the way that you're seeing it, you're not going to have intimacy. You're going to be in conflict until you can release that mindset.
Yeah. Intention instead of intimacy. You can really become tense and tight and stuck in your own way instead of, I love that, having that opportunity for intimacy. And I was going through some recent conflicts in my mind, like, was I looking for the opportunity myself? Was I looking through all the lenses, getting their perspective and their perception of it, and really working with that?
And it can be difficult. It's difficult. And another practice is holding things gently. Like, this is something that our friend Sinjin and I talk about. I mean, he bestowed upon me, how deeply can you accept what is? He was the one that brought that mantra to me, and one that I brought to him was, like, holding things gently. Don't grip things so tightly. Whether that's your perspective, your opinion, your beliefs, your whatever, make sure that there's room for something else besides what you think or what you believe, because you don't know. There's very little that you actually know. We have a lot of beliefs. We have a lot of, things that we think are likely to be true. But what you really know, that list is a very short list. And so the more gently you can hold on to your experience and the things that you believe to be a certain way, or the way you want things to be, the more gently you can hold them, the less suffering, the less resistance you're going to have to those twists and turns in the river, those meanders, because you're not holding so tightly that I'm going to go straight and I'm going to go in this direction because this is where I need to go, or this is how it needs to look. Similarly, when you're in conflict with somebody, hold your perspective or your position as loosely as you can, as gently as you can. I had this experience and I have these feelings, but what was yours? Because maybe mine wasn't fully, accurate. Maybe I didn't see everything exactly as it was happening. And so, getting that extra perspective, that intimacy, that deeper understanding of the other person and their experience can offer you the full view of what happened. But if you're so tightly clinging to your experience being the experience, that can, again, create a lot of suffering.
Yeah. And also just how exhausting it is to cling so tightly.
Right.
I was thinking of a bicycle and the handlebars. When I first learned how to ride a bicycle, I had a death grip for multiple years, I want to say. And it was just so exhausting. I'd be so sweaty, and it just was gripping so tight, like warping the bar, because I was afraid. I didn't want to accept. I wanted extra control, so I thought I could hold tighter and I would control better. But you think I was actually steering that bicycle any better or more safely by exerting so much of my energy to squeeze and make my hands and my arms sore? probably was doing the exact opposite. So slowly trying to hold those gently as well.
Yeah, I saw somebody riding a motorcycle yesterday, and this is so funny bringing up handlebars. I saw someone riding a motorcycle on the highway, and we were passing them because they were going rather slow. And I could see from their body language, as someone who has ridden motorcycles, they were not comfortable. They were not riding that bike with comfort. They were very rigid and stiff, and they were like the turns, like we were in a curve, and instead of just like gliding through the curve, it was like little tiny micro movements, and you could just tell they were not comfortable or moving smoothly with it. And I'm sure their experience on that motorcycle ride was less enjoyable than one maybe fast forward to a year or two when they've learned how to relax and allow the bike to do what the bike is going to do and be one with the bike rather than making the bike go where they want the bike to go. They will enjoy that ride, that experience more than when they were rigidly gripping so tightly.
That's right.
Yeah, great example, bud.
Yeah, bringing it to the physical. I like working with the examples.
Yeah.
That's good. A few more. You really sparked a few things. I'm going to drop a few rapid fire. All right. Darkness. I love that. Don't fight the dark. How great. I love saying darkness is just the absence of light.
Mm-hmm.
Darkness isn't a thing itself. This is what I believe. And that's, we dive into that in another podcast. It's a good metaphorical one. But darkness is just the absence of light. So just like you were saying, if you want to fight, quote unquote, fight the darkness, spread light. That's it. Just bring more light to it. You don't have to think about darkness and how do I get to darkness and get yourself into the darkness to fight it. That does not seem to be the way. And it's okay to want to change things, just like you were saying with Ram Dass there. Another Ram Dass quote about that same topic really resonated with a good friend of mine, Luke, and I remember they would say it all the time. It was everything is perfect. Everything is perfect, including my desire to change it. Everything is perfect, including my desire to change it. And that really brought them a lot of peace. That really helped them to deal with that balance of acceptance and change and dynamism that they've been looking for. And I was lucky to meet for the second time Raghu Marcus. Fantastic. I don't even know where to start describing Raghu Marcus, but what a guy. Follower and friend of Ram Dass and a wonderful part of the Love Serve Remember Foundation. And he was talking about how enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Enlightenment is intimacy with all things. Bringing the light, bringing awareness, closeness, intimacy to all things. And that's approach. That's not avoidance. Enlightenment is not avoiding. It's intimacy or closeness with all things. Well, thank you for listening to the Do You Feel Heard podcast. And as always, remember to send any questions, thoughts, comments to our email in the description. I believe it is contact@helpingtheherd.com. Leave comments and like and subscribe on any podcasting platforms you're listening to. Help us to grow and keep having these conversations. Also, please feel free to suggest a guest if you have a guest that you think would be good for Ian and I to connect with, to talk with, and to share their wisdom.
This has been the Do You Feel Heard podcast. If you're interested in resources that will help you move through conflict, you can go to doyoufeelheard.com, where we have tools for individuals and couples.